Hi, welcome to SBR Videos. I'm Peter Loshak. We are covering Week 8 in college football, and we're talking right now with Steve from CollegeFootballWinningcom. And if you're one of our regular viewers, you know that Steve has a great record at his site long-term with his premium picks, his formula picks, and you also know that this year, Steve is 5-0 in the 5 free picks that he's given us this year. Awesome analysis and free winners. And last week he gave us a winner fading Temple, and this week he's going to take the Temple game once again. Steve, thanks for being back with us.
Thank you for having me back, Peter.
Nice intro, huh?
That was a fantastic intro. Thank you very much.
You earned it all. You are the one who gets all the credit. I'm just relaying the information here. So before we hear your thoughts on the Temple-Houston game, give a well-earned plug for CollegeFootballWinning.com. Tell everyone how your formula picks have done in recent years.
Thank you, Peter. At CollegeFootballWinning.com, all we do is college football betting analysis, 365 days a year, even in the off-season. We are a company founded on making betting recommendations algorithmically, and we call those algorithmic betting recommendations our formula. That formula is 63.04% against the spread lifetime. That's nearly 350 games, so huge sample size. Last year, that same formula, 66.18% against the spread, and what that means is every formula for those betting on our formula units last year, every one that we gave out, if you were betting $110 to win $100, you finished the season up with us $2,756. If you're the dime bettor, the guy who wanted to win $1,000 on every formula unit we recommended last season, you were up $27,560 at the end of the season with us. The formula's only been out for 2 weeks, very small sample size so far this season, but for the last 3 weeks for all of our betting recommendations. So that goes for the free picks, the video picks, the paid picks, formula picks, all of the picks that we've given out, everything. We've given out 28 units over the past 3 weeks. We are 18-9-1.
Nice.
Those units given out the past 3 weeks. So it's since week 4. We still offer a 100% money-back guarantee on the entire season. Go to collegefootballwinning.com, put in coupon code SBR10, it's SBR10, get 10% off of any membership that we're currently offering now through the end of the season.
All right. Well, Steve, I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about the Temple game this week. Last week, of course, you advised us to fade Temple. It was kind of an obvious public trap as to why the public would be betting on Temple, and that line went up. You were absolutely right about that. Tulsa got the cover. So I'm assuming that at least some of the factors involved last week are still in play here. Here, though, Temple's a road underdog, right? A pretty substantial road underdog. 7.5 points is the current widely available number. Market wide, the total is 51. And Houston, they've had their top 2 defensive players out for the year. They've got a converted wide receiver at quarterback. So, it's hard for me to imagine that you would recommend a strong play against Temple last week and then here to bet on them this week. But maybe that is what you like. What's your analysis of his game, Steve?
No, you're right, Peter. Normally, I don't like coming back week after week and hitting on those same points because oftentimes the cat is out of the bag. But in this case, like you said, a lot of those factors are still in play. So let's just review some, update them, and take a look at this particular matchup. So Temple, 4-1 straight up so far on this season. But that strength of schedule, and we talked about this last week, it is the second weakest of all FBS teams that are playing this week. So super weak strength of schedule. Talked about that last week. Last week's Tulsa-Temple game, the one that we previewed, that was neck and neck. If you watched that game, it was neck and neck into the fourth quarter. So
yeah, I didn't watch it, but I monitor on the internet. Yes.
Yeah. So it was an 11-point. It was an eventual 11-point victory for Temple, but that absolutely is deceptive. That was, like I said, neck and neck. That game was going back and forth. It was really anyone's for the taking. And Tulsa just sort of ran out of gas at the very end. So don't be swayed by thinking Temple they didn't cover the spread. We know that. They missed covering the spread by 6 or 6.5 points. But don't be thinking that they got an easy win. It absolutely was not an easy win against really what is considered, at least by strength of schedule and performance so far this season, an inferior opponent, especially when compared to this Houston team right now. So the best total defense that Temple has played so far this season by yards per play allowed versus FBS competition, that was UConn. And they rank 48th in that category. Houston is 6th in the country. So this is far and away a major step up in class in terms of the defense that Temple is going to face when looking at Houston on Friday night. Now, this is the second start this season for Houston quarterback. You already said converted wide receiver, Greg Ward Jr. He accounted for 263 yards of total offense last week in his first start this season at quarterback versus Memphis. Now, give you an idea, that's around 37% more productive than the previous starting quarterback, the guy who's been benched, John O'Corn. Ward's production, that was against Memphis. Memphis's defense ranks 59th versus the FBS total defense. Now, Temple's is 51st, so very similar. But here's where we need to remember just how bad Temple's strength of schedule is. So Ward, you said converted wide receiver, but he played quarterback in high school, and he actually has some starts here at Houston dating back to last year, and he has been the active quarterback in their Wildcat package. And like I said, he started last week, so this is absolutely not a makeshift, we are desperate, let's throw somebody in, and the best guy we have is a wide receiver. It is not that. This guy can play quarterback. Turnovers. Talked about it last week. Temple still leads the nation in points off of turnovers. They average 15.9 points off of turnovers per game. But just like I said, or I gave you this analysis last week too, Temple's margin of cover, updated now, is plus 13.7 points per game. And again, like last week, depending on points scored off of turnovers is definitely gambling. So Temple's offense, like I said last week, still the same, not manufacturing that many points on their own. As far as turnovers go, by the way, they've met their match this week in Houston in terms of turnovers. Houston and Temple, they're tied for takeaways in the FBS versus FBS competition. So, and you add into that mix with Houston's quarterback John O'Corn now on the bench, that turnover margin looks to improve for Houston. In O'Corn's 5 games as a starter this season, before Ward came in relief, he threw 8 interceptions in just 5 games. So that was one of the worst interception rates per game in the entire FBS. So that's gone now. So we look to see an improvement in turnover margin for Houston. Houston's margin of cover is almost a -1 point. So almost a full point negative per game. But that margin of cover in their last game versus Memphis was plus 11. That was their second best margin of cover on the season. We think that was no fluke, again, in part due to this turnover turnaround and the change at quarterback that has reinvigorated this Houston offense. Odds makers raised Houston's average, on average. Odds makers, not bookmakers, odds makers raised Houston's power ratings by around 2.5 points from last week to this week. But it's still a good 3.5 or 4 points below where odds makers thought Houston should have been to start this season. Now, after last week's, looking at Temple, after last week's 11-point straight-up victory for Temple, their margin of cover, we said -6 or -6.5 on last week. Odds makers, they lowered Temple's power rating on average by just around 1.5 to 2 points. But that is still 7 points higher than where odds makers thought Temple should have been to start this season. Just like I asked you last week, what is it that Temple has done to merit such an increase? Don't be fooled by that straight-up record. Based on how odds makers have been rating these teams, had these two teams played in week 1, Houston would have been favored by at least 11 points, 11.5, 12 points. I think that early assessment going into the season is actually closer to being correct than the adjusted odds makers ratings right now. But that would not have tripped our trap detector that I keep talking about with you. That would not have tripped it if this were an 11 or 12 point game with Houston as that kind of favorite. So, like I've said before in previous videos this season, this game was revealed to me by our trap detector. And that trap detector now, Peter, is 65.63% correct so far this season, sample size of 32 games. So, but here's part of it. if you cannot get Houston at -7 right now, and it's available only at a few books right now, you should buy that half point. Get them at -7. But we only recommend buying that half point if you're just paying 10 additional cents. So getting it at -120. We have an article doing all the math for you, explaining when to buy hooks in college football. So all you need to do, if you don't want to search our site, CollegeFootballWinning.com, and look for it, just Google, should I buy the hook in college football? Or should I buy the hook college football? I think we're the top search result. But our recommendation is you get Houston at -7, buy that half point, but only if you are paying -120 to get Houston -7.
All right, Steve. Well, interesting thoughts. I think the point is that Steve recommends taking Houston at -7, which you might be able to find at 110. You can probably find it at 120. You might have to pay 125. But all right, so for the purposes of our record keeping, we'll give you Houston -7, and hopefully it won't wind up mattering. But thanks again for all your thoughts, Steve from CollegeFootballWinning.com. Talk to you again next week.
The SBR Network offers free sports picks and game breakdowns, big money free betting contests year-round, a real-time Vegas-style odds monitoring service, and much more. So come see for yourself. To stay updated on SBR news and promotions, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Google+, and do be sure to subscribe to the Sportsbook Review YouTube channel to catch all our daily sports shows.